Good evening and welcome to Undoing I Do with Stephanie and a Day. I'm Stephanie Hunnell, the owner of the Hunnell Law Group in Asbury Park, New Jersey, and your co-host for this evening.
And I am Adela La Sherilyn Dow, the owner of the law offices of Adela La Sherilyn Dow in Staten Island, New York. And I am also your co-host for this evening. Hey, Stephanie, we have a great guest who is your personal friend. I am so excited to let you introduce this beautiful lady that we have with us today. We are always upgrading Facebook with all of our faces of beauty on it. I tell you,
I
just
know.
too far.
I love it. I'm so excited to have Shonda Neal on with us today. Wears many hats. She's a realtor, broker. She does mortgage. She has mortgage background as well. But I'll let you tell a little bit about yourself, Shonda. She's also one of my really good friends' moms too.
Okay.
Welcome to the show.
My name, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. My name is Shonda Neal, and I'm a realtor with Berkshire Hathaway in Asbury Park. I am also a senior mortgage consultant for America's First Funding Group in Red Bank, New Jersey. And I am also an investor. So I own my own company called Premier Realty Solutions, LLC. So I know a lot about real estate, obviously. And I've had a lot of customers going through divorce. I've had a lot of customers who aren't even married and have property settlements they have to do. And so I have successfully sold, a lot of these homes from $1 million all the way down to 200,000. So hopefully I can be of some help to you today.
We
Awesome.
know you will. We know you will. You know what, Shonda? Shonda just said something that caught my spirit with the whole people who are not married buying houses. Should we talk about that? Because, folks are playing house and it's just a whole different
Well, that's
deal,
it's a
right?
real
It's a whole
issue.
different
I mean, I've
deal.
been divorced. I've never been married. I'm single, but I've been divorced twice. So, we've got a lot to talk about when it comes to property settlement.
I love that.
And I think it really starts with how you buy property when you're buying property, how you buy the property. Most of the time, it's not even talked about. And so, if you buy property, if you're a couple and you're not married, are you buying it as joint tenants with the right of survivorship, or are you buying it as tenants in common? And it's something seriously you should ask your attorney. So, if you guys want to run with that a little bit, I think
Yeah.
Oh
that's where
my
the problem
goodness.
starts. People
It's
don't even
so
understand.
true. People don't understand, Stephanie. I think we
Mhm.
had a show about either we had a whole show about it or we talked about it in passing, because I had a client of mine who purchased a home with his girlfriend. They had a baby together. They weren't really dating, but they had the baby together. And, her name was put on the house for 10%, but she put nothing into the house. And then it was all this, that's really unfair. Why do I have to give her 10% now that we're breaking up? I mean, she didn't do anything for it. But yeah, you created this whole contract when you put her name on the deed for 10%, right, Steph?
Absolutely. We see it all of the time. I've seen it with friends where I'm telling my friend, I'm giving you some amazing free advice right now. Do
Free.
not do it unless you have some agreement in writing. What's going to happen if something happens to the relationship? How is the house going to be divided? And when somebody's, getting involved in the situation, you only see like the little birds chirping in the background and these lovely like little flashes, and you're so happy and excited you're buying a house together. And reality sets in when you start living with someone.
Okay. That part. I mean,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's not a
And
marriage.
you, no, but you're going into a 30-year financial commitment. And most of the time,
Thank
you
you.
don't have a 30-year commitment. You know? So that needs to be like
Okay.
laid out on the table. I mean,
Thank
I
you.
was 25 when I went through this, when I purchased my first house. And if I had known a lot of this, a lot of would have been settled up front, and I wouldn't have had to go to a petition suit. And so I know
Yes,
what
and a
that's all about.
partition, yes, a partition is a big deal.
Mhm.
And no, you're not going to hire an attorney on contingency for that. So you need to come with your money. And so since you are going to be since you're creating this quasi marriage like relationship that the law doesn't actually recognize, you should probably stop at your local real estate attorney's office. Stephanie would be one of those people, and set something down in writing. If the person, it's great if the person does real estate and mats like Stephanie does,
Yeah.
because then of course that person knows what they're talking about. Don't go to a real estate attorney who has no idea about matrimonial law. Don't do it, because they're not going to be able to properly advise you. And quite frankly, spending that extra 1,000, 2,000, I don't know what it is, to have your exit plan and your exit strategy mapped out is going to save you thousands and a whole lot of headache.
I have to tell you, the last partition application that we had to do was about $12,000 worth of counsel fees by the time we were said and done. And the court, when we go, it's a different type of court. So you're not going to family court where they're doing what's fair and equitable and reasonable and all this stuff. When you go to partition your property, they want to see receipts. They want to see who paid for what. They're looking at this outline. They're not going to say, let's have a starting point of 50-50 just because both of your names are on the house. They're going to look at all of that stuff, and all of that takes a lot of time, which means a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Listen to the advice now, because your butt will be in a world of hurt later. I'm so glad that you brought that up, Shonda, because people just don't get it. They just, oh, the next step is to buy a house. No, the next step is to either put a ring on it or get me some kind of contract.
Yep.
The next step
And
is not to buy a house.
I love, Shonda, that you mentioned that it's a 30-year commitment, because people
Yeah.
aren't thinking about that when they're signing this huge stack of papers for their mortgage. They're like,
Yeah, all they're thinking about is the monthly payment.
Oh,
Hello,
I
it goes
sure
way
wasn't.
beyond the
I
monthly
sure
payment.
wasn't.
Oh my goodness. So now, when you,
Oh,
what
he's
Steffi
buying
and
me a
I,
house. He's buying me a house. And that's not the case.
that's just not it. It's just not it. And it's
Not
not
not not
cute.
unless he's giving you the deed is in your name. If the deed is in your name, you're all set.
uh-huh.
Carry on. If the deed is in your name, do keep doing what you were doing to get that deed. But,
Did you say get that D or deed?
the deed. Oh, see, Stephanie. Oh,
The deed.
see, Stephanie. You are a bad influence. Bad. Oh. But Stephanie and I deal with this all the time, where we're talking about people who are in the marriage, and it's, I want to keep my house. I want to keep my house. My kids were brought back from the hospital there. Our grandma sat in this very seat rubbing the dog's belly. And I just need to keep this house because all of the memories are in. And then when we start talking about the brass tacks of what it is like to keep this house, then we have all kinds of other feels and stories, right?
Exactly. How do you deal with that, Shonda, as a realtor, when you have people that are splitting up, whether or not they're in the middle of a divorce or just contemplating it?
There's never been a situation that's been alike. So it's, like, I guess each divorce case is different, each person is different, each situation is different. When it's amicable and somebody usually like hands over the lead and you're only dealing with one person, and the other person just checks in and says that's fine, that's the easiest way to deal with it. But when you have to appease two different people who aren't on the same page, then basically you just have to disclose just so much to each person. It becomes a little tricky.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So
Yeah.
basically you have to have good negotiation skills. You have to have really good negotiation skills, and you have to have them somewhat on the same page in terms of what the house is going to sell for, how soon you want to sell it, and if somebody is disrupting the agreement. That's why we really need you guys involved. We need an agreement really before they even go to sell the property. And
Right.
I would say that it's easier to sell the property before, where they want to sell it and they're going to split it 50-50. But if it's a situation where one is buying the other out, then it can get pretty complicated.
Yeah.
Well, it's easy to resolve with an appraisal. You get the house appraised, and that's what the house is worth. But
Yeah.
in a market like today, if you're planning to get a divorce, this is the best time to get it because you're going to get top dollar for your house, and it's the best market to get a divorce in. So if you're contemplating and you're thinking and you're pondering, don't ponder too long. Don't wait for the market to change. Sell it now.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, it's
it's.
pretty
Go ahead, Steph.
good. I would say it's pretty saturated right now with buyers. So these houses seem to be like flying off the market now.
Yep. As long as they're priced right. But I guess, people are
And
also in a situation where they're having multiple offers, right? And over ask and everything right now.
yes, even over the appraised value. So some people are waiving inspections, all kinds of weird things are happening out in the field. But now is the time where you're going to be able to sell it. The average time in Monmouth County is now a month and a half.
Oh wow.
Last year, this time it was 4 months
Wow.
to sell a house. And now it's a month and a half. So
Yeah, that's pretty
and
crazy.
the amount of available real estate, the amount of available real estate from last year is down 35% for
Oh my
single family
goodness.
houses. So, and for condos,
Oh
it's
my
down
goodness.
25%. So it's a slim pickings.
Yeah.
So, but a good time to
Yeah,
get a
and so
divorce if your property
so the
sells.
thing about it is that when you have people like, and something that you said was really brilliant, when you know that you're going to be getting a divorce, before you actually, if you can make a deal to sell that house before you actually get the attorneys involved, you're probably better off, as Shonda said, because what I find happens is that when we get into the divorce table, everybody's cool, everybody wants to sell the house, and then all of a sudden there's a little wrinkle somewhere, and one person wants to stall now selling the house because they want to use their consent to sell as leverage to get something else. So I think that's brilliant advice. Sell before you get the lawyers involved, if you can.
I think that's a great idea, especially if that's something that's an issue resolved. I find it's difficult once I'm involved to get another attorney to concede that we're going to resolve one of the issues. If they've already agreed to list the house, that's better. Even if it's just listed, they don't have to agree to the distribution. They just have to agree to have it listed. We could hold the money in escrow or whatever we need to do if we have to do that. But the problem also is if you wait until after the divorce is finalized, there's usually someone, not both of them, still living in the house. So the person who's living in the house has very little incentive to hurry up and sell because they're still comfortable. Their life hasn't changed that much. The person that's out of the house may even have not only, an obligation to pay for the house, but also have support obligations, because the person who keeps the house tends to be the kids. I mean, the one with the kids.
Yep. So, yep. The person with the kids tends to be the one who keeps the house. And one of the considerations, am I going to sell or am I not going to sell? Look, the biggest consideration is that if you are, see, John is up here. He's right. Lawyers are the problem. And yes, it's present company excluded. We knew. Because we're the bomb.com, so it can't be us. But one of the biggest things that we come up against is this concept of I want to keep the house, and isn't my spouse going to pay the mortgage? What do you mean that I have to use my child support and my alimony, or in New York, my spousal support to pay the mortgage? And so if you're at the point where you're looking at those numbers and those numbers don't add up, you probably need to put your house on the market, and you probably need to put it out on the market quickly, because what's going to end up happening is that once you look at those numbers and you see what you're getting, your mortgage is $3,000, but your spouse is only going to pay you $4,000 in combined support. Unless you have the money to make it go for the gas, the electric, the car, the kids, the feeding of the cats, and all of that, you're not going to be able to afford this place.
Yep.
And so no matter how much emotionally the house means to you,
and
the emotions are not going to pay your bills. So how do you deal with that, Shonda, when you have...
And you don't want to ruin your credit.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. You don't
especially
want
if
to ruin your credit.
especially
You
if
don't
you're
want to ruin
looking to
credit.
buy something post
And you
divorce,
don't
right,
want to
Shonda?
deplete. Yeah, especially that. You don't want to deplete your equity either. So when you stop paying your mortgage and your principal starts rising, you deplete your equity. So you have less money left over to live on or to purchase something else. You have less credit if you go that route. I've been in situations where I've had to do a short sale, um, and where a wife prolonged the situation. She was in the house for as long as she could. There's no equity left, so that I had to negotiate a short sale just so that she wouldn't have a foreclosure, or they wouldn't have a foreclosure on the record. So you don't want to get into that situation either.
That's
Yeah.
terrible. And can you tell the people what a
You
short
can
sale is,
resolve it
just in
and
case they don't know?
just move on. Yeah, a short sale is when you sell the house for less than what you owe on the house. So, for example, if you owe 300,000 on the house, but you can only sell it for 250, then you have to do a short sale, and the bank
Mm-hmm.
will eat $50,000 most of the time, and let
Mm-hmm.
it go. Maybe not in this market. In this market, they might just want to sell it. They might just want to foreclose on you. So, banks aren't as friendly as they used to be when it wasn't a seller's market. In a seller's market, the bank wants to get as much as they can.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And for those people, the short sales have to be approved by the bank. So, you can't just decide that you're going to sell
They
your
have to.
house and have a short sale. The bank has to review it. They'll send out their own appraisers. It's a huge process. And they
Yeah.
have to approve of it. And they can say, no, we're not going to accept that sale.
Right, because at the end of the day, this is not monopoly money. This is the bank's
That's
money.
right.
So if you're selling this for this amount of money, you're cheating the bank out of $50,000. The bank is not just going to let $50,000 go just out on the fly like that. That's not going to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, John is saying these days it is a huge problem in terms of cost.
Not
The
only
market is
that,
so hot that even if you sell the house, buying a new house or rent house, apartment, condo that is big enough for you and the children is likely going to be more than keeping the house. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
That's very true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you have had your house for
and
10, 15
and you
years,
can't purchase another house for
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah, and then you'll be
Especially in the
prohibited
area.
from purchasing another house for 3 years.
Right. And when you have kids and you want to stay in the same school district, depending on what area you live in, where you sell your house, where you have two incomes for one household, now you have separate households and separate incomes. And that's also a problem. So you might not even be able to stay in that area any longer.
That's right. Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
that's a huge consideration that
Right.
you really have to think about when you're getting into the divorce process. What is again, like we said before, what do I want my life to look like a year, 2 years down the line? And I mentioned this on a live that I did, or maybe it was on our show, Stephanie. Sometimes people are holding on to these houses and the houses aren't even serving them anymore.
Right.
They're serving something that they think that they wanted to have.
Right.
That's not even a reality anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yep, serving their old life, and
Mm-hmm.
they can't look forward to what their new life is going to look like because they have the baggage from the old. Yep, absolutely. It's kind of funny. So John posted another comment, and he essentially was saying, as a practice tip for realtors, never tell potential buyers that they're going through a divorce, because when he was looking to buy his home, they were able to get it for $40,000 less because the couple was going through divorce and they knew they were in a pain point and they were able to negotiate less.
So Shonda, do you have to disclose that kind of
Yeah.
information
Hi,
to
Nicole.
buyers?
No, absolutely not. You don't
Yeah.
have to disclose it. In fact, the less you disclose, the better. When you're selling your house, you want to take down all your family photos, all your pictures, because the idea is to let the new buyer see themselves in the house and not see
Mm-hmm.
you in the house. So,
Mm-hmm.
you should remove all of that. But there are a lot of investors out there. If you want to sell your house quick, fast, in a hurry, and you just want out. There are investors that will buy it for cash, and I know lots of them, so you can call me about that too. So
So when
there's
you have
something for
investors
everyone,
buying,
so
we have a little bit of a delay. I
mhm.
apologize. When you have investors buying, what kind of situations would you, if you have the seller, right? You have the seller. In what kind of situations would you definitely recommend them looking at an investor purchasing the house as opposed to just putting it out on the open market?
I think the scenario where there's lots of equity and they're not so concerned about getting the top dollar, maybe, there's some type of emergency in the family, some type of sickness, or some kind of reason that a person has to move quickly. I don't know, maybe a job offer, a job transfer. I can't think of a particular situation, but definitely if you need to move quickly, you want to move with an investor who has cash, somebody that's not going to hold up your house. Certainly not somebody that has a house to sell.
Oh,
You know,
Right.
yeah.
Those are
Mm-mm.
those are the worst.
The
the
worst.
the less contingency, the less contingencies, the better.
Right. When we're talking about selling a house in the divorce process, I've seen situations where we have two divorce attorneys, one on each side, and each has their own realtor. Real estate attorney as well, because they can't get along. And then that just
Mhm.
prolongs the process.
Right.
So, there's all
Yes.
kinds of reasons why you probably don't want to get attorneys involved right away if you know that you're in agreement on selling the house.
That's true.
Right.
I have a question also for you, Shonda. Have you
Definitely.
noticed any differences with like selling houses with the forbearance, the mortgage forbearance?
Yeah, sometimes a mortgage forbearance will, lend itself to a short sale. So it depends how much the forbearance is for. In
Hmm.
this market, you don't find it because, the houses are, escalating so quickly in value. So, in fact, I believe they've gone up 20%, 22% on the average in Monmouth County over the last year.
Oh,
That's
So,
wow.
that's
nice.
an awful lot. Yeah,
Maybe
so
I could
people that
afford to
have
buy John's house.
forbearances,
I know, looking at his house right now.
Look, John said that. John, run me your address, John. John just said that that he has a house in his neighborhood that was listed at 560 and sold for 615. So, like Shonda said,
yeah,
this is
that's
the
happening.
time. If you're gonna do it, you might as well strike while the iron hot is hot,
Yeah.
especially if you know that you need additional money to establish yourself someplace else.
Mhm. I just don't get it with COVID. I
Yeah, so
really
we're
don't
pretty
understand the
close now
market.
to, well, we're at a tipping point. So once COVID is over, the market is going to change because you'll have a lot of people going into forbearance, going into foreclosure, people that haven't been able to keep up with their mortgage because of COVID. So nobody really knows how much is hanging out there or what the government is going to do to help resolve it. Right
Yeah.
now, banks can't foreclose. So, but we're at a tipping point, and real estate goes through this usually every 7 years. So I've been in the market now 21 years. I've seen three cycles go through, and we're really, close to a tipping point. And I would say, I'm not sure if we'll be in the same predicament next year this time. So don't hang
Mm,
around if you need that money
Yeah.
and you
mm.
want out.
Yeah. I
Get it
really want
now.
to, I know I want to look at some commercial property, but I have waited because I'm thinking that it's going to burst any moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, definitely commercial real estate is seen its day because so many people now are going to be able to work from home, and the market is just not going to be as robust as it was even last year.
So many people have given up their
So,
leases for their offices, and so I'm giving up my lease and moving to a different space because it's not necessary for me to be in this 2,000 square foot office when my staff is not even here most of the time. So yeah. Mm-hmm. What is
John
live in
says,
the van down the river? You know what? Listen, John.
said Shonda's advice is to sell now, live in a van down by the river, and then buy low in a year.
Is DCPP gonna come to my house if I live in the van with my 2 kids down the river, John? Because you're gonna have to come out of this whole. You're gonna have to come out of mediating, and you're gonna have to start representing me, because it's gonna be a problem. I feel like there's a problem on the horizon if I do that, John.
You know what's funny is so many people actually bought like vans and converted
RVs.
buses and RVs
Mhm.
and stuff so they can travel, because people want to travel. So there they go. They can, John, you can live in your RV with Jason and your daughter.
I'm not gonna come visit y'all though. I'm not, because I'm not an RV type of chick. Oh, he said he meant an RV. Okay, all right, John.
You know, John's RV is not little, so it's, you know.
Yeah, John got a gangster RV, so that's cool.
Oh, they have a
I might
model.
just come to visit.
Nice. They have them all pimped out now. They're really nice.
Right. I mean, really, like way nicer than people's houses.
Yeah.
There was a show on HGTV about like these $1 million RVs, and I'm like, this is way nicer than my house. I could do, you know. So I actually have a neighbor who has one of these huge RVs, and the RV is larger than the guy's driveway, and it like hangs off of the driveway. And I'm like, what do they do? You know, where do they go? Where do they go with that thing? John will let us know.
They want.
I suppose that's true.
Well, the nice.
So what is your
The
biggest
nice thing
tip?
about that is you can move whenever you want.
That's true.
My biggest tip?
Yeah, your biggest tip for couples who are actually in the divorce now and who are eventually going to have to put their houses up on the market in terms of dealing with each other, perhaps. You know, take it from one of the cases where you had the most conflict with trying to get these people's house sold.
I think my biggest tip is to just, you have to be in the mindset of moving forward and leaving the past behind. It's easier said than done. You have to focus on what you want to accomplish. And doesn't everybody want to have an amicable divorce? And how many people really have it? I think I read somewhere there's like 800,000 divorces a year. Wow. So don't you want to have an amicable one? And if you don't, then you know, it's a business transaction, and try to take the emotion out of it. Try to take the emotion out of it. Like I said, it's easier said than done, but that's my biggest tip, you know.
Yeah, I have
How
got to.
about that one? So many people don't. So many people just don't listen. And, you know, a lot of people take the attitude, you just want the commission. And it's really, you know, my business hasn't been about that. My business really has been about having customers for a lifetime. You know, I make friends with a lot of my customers. And if not, I really try and keep it on a professional level where I treat the customer the way I want to be treated. And, you know, that's the golden rule. So listen to your realtor. And if you know your husband isn't going to listen to the realtor, then you know, maybe you do need somebody to mediate, or somebody to be able to talk to your spouse about, you know, what the best thing is for them. So, you know, the realtor has to be able to talk to each spouse and look at where each spouse is going, you know, what each spouse is looking to do. And as long as you can move forward, you know, you're going to have a successful divorce.
Yeah, I agree with that. People need to look forward.
What does a successful divorce look like?
A successful divorce is one that does not emotionally ruin you and your children.
And does not take all the money out of your pocket
I've had
for your life after divorce.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think for attorneys too. So I have a tip for attorneys. Rely on the realtor. Now that I do, we have a family part and also a real estate part. But, the realtors are invaluable because they can have conversations with each party, with the other realtor, and get things negotiated where we as attorneys have to advocate for our clients. So we're taking in the client's position and we're advocating for our client to make sure that we're getting what we think their client needs and what's fair for them, or just what they want. But with the realtors, they might be able to come in. I've had conversations with realtors where I say, look, this is where we need to go. Can you guys get us there? And then the realtors can have a conversation with their respective clients, and they can do things that we can't necessarily do, and get the deal done. Because at the end of the day, that's what we all want, is we want the transaction to happen.
Absolutely. And you just said it, a transaction to happen, because as Shonda said, once your kids are good, once your kids are dealt with, there should be no emotion. It is all about business. Now you see, John, I'm trying to be serious.
I know. John
is up here. Shonda, John is up here making sure that we act out today.
Mm-hmm.
He said, put his comment up, Stephanie. Go on and put his comment up. He said, yep, Stephanie is there to cut a bitch. Do you see, John? Do you see how he's behaving tonight?
Oh.
Eddie knows I love it. I love it. I'm all down for it. But yeah, at the end of the day, you have to treat this as a business decision. Your marriage is sanctioned by the state because they can tax you on it. You are one entity, and this is all government sanctioned, right? It's nice that you loved each other. You were all cuddly and this, that, and the other. But now when we're ending it, it's all about business. Don't worry about who cheated. Don't worry about what your mama said at the wedding. Don't worry about who didn't show up with a gift. Go forward. Absolute best advice any of us could give. Go forward. We had such a great time on this show. Oh, you had something else? What'd you say?
I do. I have a question. So what I want to know is, if a couple is getting a divorce and their equity in the house is over $500,000, and one of them ends up keeping the house, is the tax liability then reduced to $250,000?
If one of them ends up keeping the house,
tax liability, and you're exempt. You're exempt for $500,000 when you're a couple, but if you're single, you're only exempt for $250,000, right?
Yep.
Of equity. So once you get divorced, what happens with that?
So generally, if somebody's going to buy
liability,
if somebody's going to buy the other person out, then there's generally not going to be a tax liability on that. But the thing about it is to make sure that you're as creative as possible, right, with what you're doing. And so you can, if your accountant thinks that there is going to be a tax liability for something, depending upon the type of home it is, the type of property is, right? Because if you're talking about the 500, we're assuming that it's your primary residence. But if your accountant thinks that there is going to be a tax liability for whatever reason, then you need to plan with that person to see whether you can move, if you're going to buy another house, move the portion of that money that would be taxable to buy a house in a 1031 exchange. That's what I always, tell people to do. Get with an attorney who does 1031 exchanges. Get with your accountant. Get down and dirty with them. Don't ever rely upon an attorney's tax advice unless the attorney also has a CPA behind their name.
Yep, exactly. And also, we can't forget that when somebody is keeping a $500,000, house with a $500,000 worth of equity, there's probably other assets that are going to be offset against what that house is. So we're looking at that as well, because somebody might be keeping a 401k and the other one keeping a house. So you're not looking at a true $500,000 worth of equity.
Correct.
So the buyout could be like where it could be as little as like a $50,000 buyout. Yeah.
Yeah, so see, John said that the numbers are involved and it's hurting his head. And then he asked what a 1031 exchange was. Okay, so this is why you need to make sure that you hire attorneys when you're dealing with this type of stuff, and that you consult with an accountant. Because a 1031 exchange is a vehicle that allows you to purchase another home or like and kind property without paying capital gains taxes. That's what a 1031 exchange is. It's a loophole that allows you to use the money without paying Uncle Sam. So yes.
Yep. And
that's the quickest way I can explain that.
Yep. And there's specific time frames regarding how long it was when you sold the previous property, how long the money is sitting there. And you have to have a person, I forget what they're called. Ooh, do you remember what they're called that has to be involved? It's not an attorney. Do you remember, Aday?
I don't remember what they're called.
But there's a specific professional that you have to hire when you're doing these 1031 exchanges. It's not just that you decide I'm going to sell my house and then, in 6 months, I'm going to make this other purchase. You have to make these elections in advance with your accountant and with this other professional.
And usually, I mean, when we refer people, we refer them to a particular attorney, who does this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that person creates the 1031 exchange for you. And so, speak to your attorney and see. I mean, most of us know people who do 1031 exchanges, and the person I know, that's all he does. Right. On Staten Island. He's the only guy on Staten Island who's the go-to who does them. And so, yeah, you can't just come up in your head, I'm going to do this and, think that it's going to work when you didn't actually make a plan to have it happen.
Right. And if somebody isn't familiar with them and says, no problem, I'll help you out with it, run away. You have to go to somebody. I would never do it. You have to send it out to a professional.
Must. There is usually not a one-stop, type thing, one-stop shopping in these types of circumstances. A good attorney is going to tell you when they are at the end of what they can do and what they know how to do, and they're going to refer you to somebody else.
Yep.
Look at all the different topics that we got up in here today. John talking about the RVs. Then he had Stephanie cutting people. Then we had 1031 exchanges. Then we had...
This is a really great show. We're so happy you came on, Shonda.
Thank you, Shonda. I'm so glad, Shonda, that you even said that you would come on a few weeks ago and we were talking about something else. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciated it.
Yep. And don't forget to like us, subscribe. You can go to our YouTube page as well. And hopefully subscribe there and set an alert so you can see us every Thursday at 6.
Every Thursday at 6. And hey, Jason, that's John's husband. John, thank you for watching us, Jason. I hope that you weren't forced to watch us, but that's a whole nother story. And we're going to have Shonda's contact information in the show notes.
Yes. Have a great night, everyone.
Good night.